we now go on to our next panel, panel 3, which is understanding the value machine learning generates for the upstream oil and gas sector, understanding the value. With this, we have a moderator, Steffan Lindso, who is Subsea Robotics Product Manager with Oceaneering. Steffan, over to you.
Thank you very much, and welcome to this third panel of the day. With us, we have some really interesting panelists, I think, that from a broad aspect of the industry, both in the operator and the service company's point of view. Since we're going to dive into a specific subject, first I want to make sure that everyone is introduced. And then, so I'll start off with myself. So as Stuart said, Subsea Robotics Product Manager. Basically what that entails in this setting is that we are developing these subsea robots, applying now in this generation of robots a lot of artificial intelligence and machine learning in order to make these things do what they're supposed to do in a more efficient way. So that's my way into this, and that's why I'm very keen and interested in this subject. So if we go through the panelists, so I'll just do it in alphabetical order. So Andrea, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself and where you're from and what you do.
Sure, I'll go first. So my name's Andrea, of course, and I work for Shell Ventures. I am based in Houston, so it's still very early. Forgive me, my brain hasn't woken up yet. Shell Ventures is the corporate venture capital arm for Shell. What we do is we make minority investments in innovative startup companies that will help develop new technologies and disruptive business models in areas that are strategic to Shell and Shell businesses. We invest in different types of verticals in a mix of oil and gas, renewable energy, clean tech, new fuels for transport, smart mobility, and digital.
Thank you, Andrea. And then Cetin, please.
Hi, Cetin Karakus. I run the Quantitative Analytics Solutions at BP. My background is in financial engineering, developing pricing and risk systems. I mean, in BP, obviously, we have both, downstream, midstream, and upstream operations, where automation and analytics it plays a really key role. And yeah.
Thank you. And then we have Paul.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Paul Seccombe, Dr. Paul Seccombe from Toumetis. I'm VP Sales and Customer Engagement and Success Manager across EMEA. Welcome to the rest of welcome to the conversation. And I've been process engineer by trade for 25 years, largely in oil and gas. And I've been in machine learning and analytics since 2010, so about 10 years.
Thank you, Paul. And then we actually had a from Saudi Aramco. We had a slight change compared to the agenda. So with us now should be Rashid and Basil. Is that correct?
Yes. Hi, my name is Rashid. I'm working at Dubayan, Saudi Aramco. Me and Basil here are on behalf of Omar Dubayan, who unfortunately couldn't make it. I come with chemical engineer background. However, I have interests in artificial intelligence, industrial revolution, and how can we integrate these technologies in our processes to make it more efficient and sustainable, as artificial intelligence is definitely the way to go.
Hello, gentlemen, ladies and gentlemen. This is Basil Al-Dosari. I am the Chief Executive of Seccombe Smart Technology. We happen to be working with Aramco and a number of initiatives related to artificial intelligence, machine learning, and others. We are helping companies pursue their digital transformation strategies in the Saudi market and the region. We're happy to be here today to talk about maybe some of the business cases that we've been pursuing.
Thank you. And last but not least, Stuart.
Hello all. Yes, my name's Stuart Scott. I'm the Director of Marketing and Sales for the Asia Pacific region for PowerAdvocate. PowerAdvocate's a Boston-based data analytics company which started over 20 years ago. We work with over 150 different clients, major players in the oil and gas, energy and natural resources sector. And we at PowerAdvocate really do three things for our clients. We enable clients to see the value in their business by cleaning and categorizing our clients' spend data. And that really helps them to see where they spend their money. Secondly, we help clients to benchmark themselves against other peers in their sector using our $6 trillion fact base of real client cost data. And then thirdly, we provide analysis tools to enable clients to extract more value out of their supply chains. And we use our library of dynamic should cost models in order to enable them to better extract the value from that supply market.
Thank you, everyone. So let's dive into it. So one of the things that I found intriguing about this headline, and the reason I wanted to join this particular, was the value bits. We've talked many years now about these digitalization and machine learning and AI, but the fact that we can now talk about value and hopefully have something to back it up was what intrigued me. So Stuart, I'll start off with you. First question here is how's the latest AI technology can be utilized to reduce cost and improve business efficiency? If you could give a stab at that one, and then we can others can join in afterwards.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Steffan, for that question. I think it's a really interesting question because this is fundamental to our business model. And I suppose AI encompasses a broad range of different technologies. Specifically, our business deals with or utilizes machine learning, which is really a subset of AI. And perhaps the other panelists can maybe articulate how other aspects of AI are being used to reduce costs. But just to talk about how our business, PowerAdvocate, utilizes machine learning. We basically provide a tool, but really the first step in reducing the costs in your business is by knowing what you're spending money on now. So first step is really just working out what's that baseline, what's that first stage, the current situation. Secondly, you need to know where you're spending too much. So once you've understood your cost baseline, you need to understand where you're spending too much money. And then thirdly, you need to know how to actually extract value. How do you reduce those costs? What are the levers that you need to pull? So when it comes to utilizing AI, PowerAdvocate, we help our clients to know what they're spending their money on now by utilizing machine learning to cleanse and categorize massive spend data, really that they are not capable of doing themselves, or they need some help to really turn it into a language that they understand. So we help clients from large multinationals to NOCs all the way through to small-time oil and gas operators. And our machine learning algorithms really are there to help classify the data down to purchase order level, invoice item description level, and then classify with a confidence level to enable a reliability in the data that the client is seeing. So we use AI in our business to then train our algorithms through our fact base, which is our database of client spend data, and then use that help the client to visually see where they're spending money. Secondly, then they need to know where they're spending too much. So we leverage the fact base that we've got, the spend database that we've got, to compare our client to their peers in the sector. And then thirdly, the knowing which levers to pull. Our capability in terms of our database also lends itself towards understanding what the market should be pricing their products, services, and equipment in the oil and gas industry that they're buying. So we provide clients with models, a library of cost models, which will enable them to compare what the price of that they're currently paying against the market pricing. So machine learning and AI is used in our space to help our clients to really make sense of data that is very cumbersome, very messy, or difficult to compare against.
Well, thank you for that. So one thing, Andrea, when we spoke last night about this discussion, you mentioned an interesting aspect of Shell and how Shell is using the venture side of things to push these new techs. Could you elaborate on how Shell is trying to get the organization to implement these things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think before I do that, I like to give a little bit of context on the challenge that we are facing in our industry, because I think it makes a lot more sense once you start understanding the challenge. So if you look at the population of the world, it's not going to stop increasing, right? So every day we're going to have more and more people. I think it's estimated, it's going to increase by more than 100%. The energy demand will increase by more than 100%. Population will go to somewhere around 9 billion people. And people are expecting to have energy and have the same standards of living that we have, in the West, in the big cities. So if you think about the energy demand and the demand that we have in our industries to reduce carbon emissions, it's a huge challenge, because we need to somehow reduce the price, but increase the energy that we're providing. So I think without digitalization, we will not be able to do this. Digitalization and AI in particular is one of the key enablers that will allow oil and gas to remain competitive, because it allows us to have cost reduction, it allows us to increase the productivity, and it allows us to grow through different business models. So AI is really making our existing operations a lot more efficient and effective. It will allow us to maximize our returns, and at the same time, it allows us to minimize our carbon footprint, which is key. I think Shell Ventures is a key part of helping Shell with the energy transition, because by making investments, we can actually increase the efficiency of these processes using technologies and startup companies outside of our core. We can then collect quality data. We can turn this data into insights, and then these insights into actions that will improve the performance of our assets. I have an example of a company we've invested in that's in the AI space. It's a company called Quantitative. What they do is they are an artificial intelligence platform, and they can provide data-driven solutions that will lower the costs and improve the quality across the subsurface. So they take all this data from the subsurface using AI, machine learning. They enable us to make better decisions, and this will deliver, a huge competitive advantage for us. You can also use digitalization to anticipate the, predictive analytics when maintenance is required. And then it would allow you again to transform the way the maintenance is done. So again, without AI and digitalization, it's very hard to maximize the revenue and minimize the risks. We are in a very risk-averse industry, so anything that we can do to make sure that our performance is better, we should definitely start looking at.
Thank you, Andrea. So Cetin, on the BP side, is that a similar approach, and how do you integrate these type of technologies in your operations? Yeah,
I think certainly, when we talk about AI, this machine learning is the biggest part of it. But you have natural language processing and computer vision and some of the other optimization related technologies also kind of put under that umbrella. Some of them, it's nothing new that we've been using these sort of things for years, especially on the upstream side when we are doing, for example, reservoir characterization or subsurface modeling, etc. So what AI does, what's happening currently is this is basically being applied on a kind of a much wider plane in many different areas, and the way these sort of technologies help with whether it's reducing costs or improving performance is mainly due to the fact that not that these technologies are something magical suddenly kind of helping. It's I think it helps because these sort of technologies are mostly database technologies, and this forces you first of all collect data and then kind of structure it and then process it. So when you start doing that on a kind of a systematic level, then obviously you find out more about your operations. For example, you can find about, as previous panelists said, you find out where for example, costs are mainly spent, right? Where the money is being spent. You can compare that with some sort of a benchmark or industry standards, and then you could take action on there, or you could use this kind of collected data about your kind of infrastructure asset, physical assets, and then kind of determine whether you're following an optimal trajectory when you're kind of maintaining such assets. You could use these to obviously improve your key performance indicators, where you're kind of keeping track of, and then that might help with some of the other operational efficiencies. So my point is like yes, these technologies are very important, but I think the main benefit we are seeing is mainly being kind of more systematic about data, data collection and structuring and kind of processing, rather than actually kind of more kind of a new suddenly kind of having access to the magical technologies without you not doing the data part really kind of in a kind of a systematic level. You won't have any benefit from even using this kind of more advanced processing technologies.
Yeah, and that's interesting, I think, because of course the getting real good data is kind of boring, whereas all the text that are used to get the end results is super interesting. So it has a tendency that we discuss the end results more than actually the boring, tedious job of actually getting good solid data that can be used. Paul, on the cloud edge part of the solutions, what opportunities arise, and how do you measure the impacts? Do you have some insights to that?
Yeah, thanks, Steffan. We're looking and we're seeing in the marketplace today a couple of really good companies coming out that are allowing, software companies that are allowing the moving from the cloud to the edge quite easily these days, which allows analytics companies like ourselves, Toumetis, to bring our analytics closer to the data, right? And a lot of customers want or perceive that they want to do this because that potentially removes the latency of any analytics that we've done in the cloud. And I say, and I've had several discussions with a couple of customers on this last week, and I say personally that, is that an advantage? In some respects, no, because if you're providing up to 3 months early warning of a failure of a pump in the Middle East somewhere, that might not necessarily, you don't need to have that amount of early warning, real-time operations, because you've got 3 months. Even if you lose a day, you're still going to be back up the next day and providing value to the customer, should there be a dropout of any kind. However, what we have found with some of our customers that have really high-speed data, for example, vibration on rotating equipment or electricity transmission data, then yes, we're finding that because of the location of those assets, because of the type of data you're getting from the equipment, from the substation or transformer, it's much better to install that analytic on a asset closer, PC based on the asset, which allows the end users to not only pass that information to the cloud to have that information stored in a bigger system, but to have that information close to that asset where a person can deliver and maintain that asset, much quicker, much easier, helping the supply chain, helping the safety of those pieces of equipment over a longer period of time.
And are we able to? Yeah, go on, Andrea. Sorry.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something on Paul's point. So for Shell, each of our physical assets, when you look at refineries and wind turbines, they generate hundreds of thousands of measurements per minute. So we're looking at real-time data from more than 7.5 million connected instruments in our assets. And that means that there are, more than 100,000 calculations that are run every minute. So applications are consuming this data at a rate of 12 million data points per second. And this has increased by a factor of 12 over the last 3 years. So when we look at proactive monitoring that can integrate these processes and allows us to find these small fixes, I think, it doesn't sound like much, but in actuality, in 2019 alone, Shell was able to save or bring in $130 million additional in revenue due to avoided production deferments that were, thanks to AI.
Do we have too much data, Andrea? When you mention that much data, you could easily imagine a software developer, analytics person being completely overwhelmed with this. Is it possible to use it?
Yeah, we have more than 1 trillion rows of sensor data, and it just keeps growing. Every minute we get tons and tons and tons of data, and we are running thousands of machine learning models in our production. But the beauty of it now is that engineers can now train their own machine learning models. And I think it is the companies who can harness these new data sources using machine learning technology, and that not only can get the data, but then can turn that into insights. Those are the ones that will really be making an impact, because the benefit of digital technologies is how they influence our decision making, because that's what really drives business value.
Right. So Rashid and Basil, Saudi Aramco, what is the main, what is an example of something that is being utilized there to drive value in this space?
When it comes to data, and speaking of data, I think Saudi Aramco at the moment is trying to adopt and see where AI falls into their digital strategy based on their business plans and so on and so forth. And speaking of big data, Saudi Aramco is at the moment working on massive project to implement predictive maintenance everywhere. So making use of data that's been recorded for the past years, I would say many years back. So the value really is to get insights out of these readings and sensors and that have been pumping into servers for many years. And I think the main maybe objective is really to detect anomalies and to basically have AI, serve the company in a way so that it can, increase efficiency and reduce costs. And this is happening as we speak. Saudi Aramco has a very clear strategy for AI and the process, and this has been implemented in a couple of facilities and plants, and this is being rolled out to others. So the objective is really to be business driven, to get insight in order to be in a position to make the right decisions at the right, to again reflect on cost reduction and increase efficiency. Saudi Aramco is the most reliable energy company on earth, oil and gas specifically speaking, as well as other renewable energies that are coming very soon. So reliance is at the I would say top of the priority list, and this is being tackled, with the help of artificial intelligence and machine learning.
Actually, one important point in that, and as Basil mentioned, is the predictive maintenance, as it is one of our initiatives and part of our roadmap toward digital transformation. Through predictive maintenance, we can use historical and real-time data to anticipate failures and take the proactive necessary actions to avoid such undesirable failures. Another benefit that can be used through predictive maintenance is that we can even minimize the testing and inspection frequency that actually costs many thousands of dollars, because through the artificial intelligence, the inspection is continuous operation. It's not something that we can use at a time, at certain times or at certain intervals. Due to our large operation and massive integrated plants, huge benefits can be accomplished by using artificial intelligence, such as reduced shutdown times and maintenance hours, as well as, for example, saving spare parts to ensure that on-spec products are met for our customers all the time.
Are you able to, with predictive maintenance, one thing I've seen in my work has been that it's difficult to get the people on the floor that needs to decide when to change out a valve, for example, or maintain a valve. It's difficult to get them to trust the data rather than just a frequent fixed interval type replacement schedule. What is your experience in that in Saudi Aramco and implementing it?
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting question. I mean, we've witnessed this in the past, having reliability engineers and specialists, concur with what data says. So I think the objective or the challenge there is really to have people who are used to, do things the conventional way, believe in data and what data dictates in terms of anomalies and failures. So I think this is an exercise that has to be undertaken, together with engineers or reliability units, to have them buy into the process. And again, seeing is believing. So running proof of concepts, running demonstrations that can show them the value of having something as such in place really, gives them visibility over how they can basically take their procedures and their operational maintenance procedures to the next level, so that they can reduce downtimes like Rashid suggested and like he mentioned. And I think this is, again, something that they have to experience in order to, trust what machines are saying.
Thank you. So changing subject slightly. One thing that is very close to my heart is the contractual side of data. And the reason I'm interested in that is not because I'm particularly interested in contracts as such, But what I've stumbled across is a bit of a problem, and that is in Oceaneering, where I work, and we're developing these new AUVs. We basically need to train our algorithms like anyone else that needs to do artificial intelligence, machine learning. We have clients that are looking at other industries like the automotive industry and compare what they are able to achieve with what we're doing. And they're talking about neural networks and all of that. And all of that requires a huge amount of data to train on. Now, only a couple of months ago, I put one of our engineers or software developers to train a simple algorithms to recognize a rock pile on the seafloor. And I didn't expect the results or the response back. And that was basically, so as you know, we have millions of hours of data for the 40 years of operation we've done Subsea. We have one image of a rock pile that we are allowed to use. Everything else we have in our stores, but we're not allowed to use it because it's bound by contractual confidentiality. So we can't even use it internal for development work. So that's something that we certainly see as a stopping block for most of the advancements that can be done in other industries. Is that something that rings a bell for others on this panel?
Well, I can step in, Steffan, on that one. I mean, obviously, my company is very familiar with contracts and how different organisations have managed the confidentiality of their business operations. In PowerAdvocate to have data, stretching back for 20 years from, pretty much, the biggest companies in the world. And, we have a proprietary data set which is based on their actual spend data. The way that we've been able to achieve that is by sitting down with those companies in the first place and striking a collaborative relationship with them from the outset, and thereby, making it clear that what we ultimately want to do is to create a data set that everyone can benefit from in the industry. So that supplier and the collaboration between us and our end client has been always very positive. I think you gave a great example of the automotive industry. There's an industry that has global supply chains, so they need global collaboration. It's not dissimilar to the oil and gas industry, but I think there has been perhaps a latency in the ability of oil and gas operators to collaborate better. And I note also just the previous number of sessions which the gentleman from Petronas was involved in. He's got some fantastic initiatives set up to really encourage supply collaboration. But that really means that the lawyers need to sit in the same room as the suppliers and the actual businesses to make sure that the contracts reflect the collaborative approach that's required in order to really progress in this space.
Any others have any insights to that? Yeah, go on, Paul.
So, yes, in answer to your question, Steffan and Stuart, it's sometimes difficult to get hold of data, but what we've found is that there are certain companies that have a first mover kind of approach to these novel or new technologies, and therefore we've undertaken some intellectual property sharing. We'll maybe talk about that a bit later with those companies. So we might share some of our IP with respect to our analytics and our approach to it in exchange for doing some more work with the one or two customers' data. What I mean by that is we've got one customer in the power industry who has a lot of unique data that they've been storing over something like 20 years. And a lot of the other utility companies that are out there, specifically in North America, they do not. But by sharing their data with and across those other customers, we can begin to apply the third customer data that they've just recorded over the last 6 months. We can apply that data onto the historic data that's been shared with us with our forward-looking customers, and therefore apply new analytics that really, for that third customer is very valuable for them And so everyone's a win-win, right? And that's kind of the way that we've approached this. It is difficult, it does take time at times, but if everyone can see a win, then that's the way forward.
Mm-hmm. And I'll just add, it's a little bit like data privacy for your own data, right? How comfortable are you with letting everyone know what temperature you like your house to be at, or where you're going, the places you're visiting, the things that you like? How comfortable are you with that? So it's the same for companies, right? Data, I think, is the new oil. Whoever owns that data and whoever can extract insights from that data has a lot of power. So although collaboration is absolutely necessary in order for AI platforms to get better and better, is how do we get people comfortable, like Paul was saying, that this is a win-win. At some point, I'm like, oh, screw it, I'm just going to send all my data to Google, or I'm just going to let Alexa listen to what I'm saying, just because the benefits outweigh the risks. So it's similar to corporate data, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree, Andrea. I think that's a fantastic point.
Yeah, no, I agree with that as well. It's all about demonstrating the value of it, and hopefully people will see that opening up data is to everyone's benefit. So we have received a few questions from the audience here. So I'm gonna run through a couple of those. So sorry if I mispronounce the name here, but Noran Ezat says, you mentioned Saudi Aramco is the most reliable oil and gas operator in the world. Are there any digitalization or risk management examples or learnings that you can share that underline Aramco's business resilience?
Well, yeah, I mean, when we say Saudi Aramco is the most reliable source of energy on earth, we mean by this that Aramco does everything. I mean, it does whatever it takes to make sure that it's producing on time and to fulfilling their customers' requests on time and as per their agreements. Now, this goes down to every unit and department. And for when it comes to AI is contributing to this process. So AI is finding its way to even elevate that to the next level and taking that reliability factor to the next level by implementing predictive maintenance, more intelligent systems that can really make sure that the infrastructure availability is optimal. And then we're talking again about business continuity and recovery just in case of any incident, and we're talking about using AI for many other uses that can contribute to being able to deliver on time and deliver with the as per the agreements and standards.
And there's an interesting comment here from Swapan Saha, where it says here, so it's kind of related to what we already discussed, but I thought it was it's an interesting conversation going on the side here. So what it says is that one open question for panel: oil and gas companies own and maintain huge data sets which are idle, never used, and forgotten. That may not be the case for everyone, of course, but that is probably the case for a few. If those data sets can be sanitized and put into an open platform, innovators and data scientists and entrepreneurs could bring more applications. So and then further down in this from Steffan again, I think an interesting differentiation is a big company versus smaller company, because here he talks about that large corporations are able to afford utilizing this data, like we've heard now from BP and Shell as well, and Saudi Aramco. But smaller companies may not have the capital in order to employ a full workforce to be able to do that. So is there a difference in the way that operators maybe that have data that they open access to this data, or is it all treated the same throughout to the industry? Open question to whoever wants to answer. Go on, Paul.
I'm not sure if you know, Steffan, but certainly Equinor are releasing various data sets, largely subsea data sets, geoscience kind of data sets. They are regularly releasing that information for companies like us and other kind of companies like Segal and whatever to do subsea analytics and help improve the approach to first oil, which somebody said on a previous part of this panel. But also, there's this, and I can't remember the exact acronym, but it's the offshore data group or whatever they want to call it, which is Shell, Equinor, and Chevron, and a couple of others, and maybe BP as well, where they are actually pooling all their data into a central location, which allows anybody and everybody to look at that data. I'm not sure if it is sanitized to whatever level it might be, but certainly there's another approach to that, which is letting everybody have a look at the data, because everyone is going to win by getting an improved analysis of the various pieces of data that are out there.
Okay. Yep. And lastly, I think before we wrap up, how do we get started? How does a company that hasn't got a big workforce working on this already, how do they get started in this? What's the first step? Stuart, I know you have thoughts on this.
Well, naturally, I've got maybe a vested interest in answering this question by saying, obviously get some help from outside. But there's a need for speed here, where a lot of these smaller operators in particular are very stressed by the current situation relating to oil prices, and hence they need to do something quickly. The best way to do something quickly is to be able to utilize your supply network most effectively, and to collaborate with others who are in the same predicament as you are. So I think, without saying, obviously PowerAdvocate is very keen to help. I think, there's certainly the best way to start, if you have no capabilities, to look at those operators or those suppliers that can give you a hand and give you a point of view. But I think the first element to start with there is to really define the problem that you're trying to solve clearly, because no amount of data and no amount of data experts and analysts will be able to help you unless you're very clear yourself what you're trying to solve. How are you trying to reduce the costs that you've got, or how are you trying to increase your production levels? Then outsource the question. Other panelists' opinion?
I will say that the analytics bit is pretty much available. I mean, in terms of open source libraries and the technologies. The main thing is around the data collection, and there obviously more data is better. But I think more important than is the more structured data is better than having a lot of unstructured or unprocessed or unsystematically collected data. So I think every company, irrespective of their size, can succeed if they just take this seriously and approach it in a kind of a systematical way of seeing the importance of data, and then kind of starting collecting it, and then setting up data processing pipelines, and then using this kind of open available technologies will be a possibility.
Thanks. And Andrea, I'll get you to take the closing word. On that same question, you are in a unique position, sitting in a big company, but dealing with a lot of smaller companies that are venturing into this space. So on that, yes. How in your mind is the best way to get going on this?
Well, I was just going to add, there are plenty of startup companies out there that would love to have your data. So if you are a small operator that are looking to get started in AI, there are plenty of really good startups that are just dying to get their hands on that data. I would agree with Stuart. first figure out what problem you're trying to solve. So you can come to these companies with a question already and say, this is my pain point, how would you solve it? That would be the most effective way. But other than that, there are a lot of opportunities. There's a lot of new, really smart people that are doing data science, that are doing AI, that are doing machine learning out there. There's not a shortage on AI companies at the moment. So if you have a problem, there's definitely a solution out there for you, regardless of the size of the company.
Very good. Well, thank you, everyone. I think this is about the closing time for this panel. Yeah, I want to thank you all for participating. I certainly think it's a very interesting subject and really interesting to hear opinions and experience from both the service providers and also the users of this in the end. Thank you all.
Yeah. Going back to bed.
Thank you very much.
Okay, great job, Steffan, and what a very interesting panel that was. A very international panel as well, so well done to the organizers again for organizing this. A couple of points that really jumped out that I think need to be continued to discuss in further panels. One was this contractual side of data. I thought it was a very interesting point that was raised, I think, by Steffan at the start. But I think more needs to be discussed on, how to optimize that process. And I really liked the point, I think it was Andrea that made around, data is accepted when the value of data, so you can kind of tell when it's working when people accept, the data, and the point about, for instance, the disruptive innovation that she used in our own personal lives, where finally we say, oh, just Google, you know about us, that's fine, but the value is so much, we're happy with that. Really interesting discussion anyway. So, and that, of course, we have to bring that idea into the work situation.